The state licensing board for officers in Minnesota came under fire after the police killing of George Floyd. The executive director of the Peace Officers Standards and Training Board called it a watershed moment. The post board sets licensing and training requirements across the state and updates them based on state law. We learned about changes made and what's still to come.
As the board is contemplating.
Minnesota's Post Board meets 4 times a year, made up of community members, those in higher education, and law enforcement, all appointed by the governor. Mendota Heights Police Chief Kelly McCarthy is the chair.
That is one of the challenges of a statewide board, is how do you make policy, how do you make rules that give as much local autonomy as possible to the communities, but maintain a statewide standard.
McCarthy came into the role in 2019, months before the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and testified about training standards during the federal trial of 3 ex-MPD officers. Now she's open and getting uncomfortable while talking about where the state of training is in Minnesota.
This is going to seem really counterintuitive. We have some of the best trained officers when you look at use of force. We have so many contacts every day that are violent in nature, that Minnesota officers de-escalate. I think why we are having this conversation now is we're not consistent. And we're certainly not consistent when it comes to people who look different from us or from people who come from different backgrounds for us. So if you're a person of color in Minnesota, you're seeing police officers, you're seeing videos of cops de-escalating situations where they're getting hit in the head with hammers. And yet you're seeing police officers unable or moving to a higher level of force with people that don't look like that officer. And so that's the really difficult conversation to have. And it's scary. It's scary to have. It's certainly scary to have on a statewide level because it gets to a lot of societal things. So it's much easier just to say, train them better.
McCarthy believes even with standards of training, it only goes so far.
Not all training is quality training. And even if you do have quality training, not everybody takes away the same thing. You have all those variables, and then you're responding to somebody who's in crisis or potentially violent, most likely armed. If it was simple, we would have solved it.
So how to become more consistent? Because you said we're good, but we're not consistent.
I think we've started by bringing in the focus on crisis intervention, by bringing in quality equity training, emphasis on the quality, where we give everybody an opportunity to really reflect on what are those biases that you come to the profession with, that you may come to different calls with.
For the first time, the Post Board is taking a full look at its responsibilities.
We are looking at every function that the Post Board does, from who is eligible to be a police officer, to standards of conduct, to training, to model policies.
Any stasis that was the case for many years with the Post Board is gone.
He's going to be busy.
Eric Misselt is on staff as the executive director.
Somewhere along the lines, the expectations for the policing profession have changed. By consequence, the expectations of the Post Board have changed, and now we are getting up to speed.
He says right now they're going through rulemaking, looking at what needs to change, along with a discussion with stakeholders about what its role should be.
We can offer training, we can put policies in place, and do all of the things that we should be doing, and yet these incidents may still happen, and it may come down to a particular agency or how they carry out their mission, and figuring out where the Post Board fits in to that scenario is, again, the crux of the argument that's going on right now.
The board and staff say they want to be part of the solution, and that's what they're working toward.
It's going to take all of us to figure out how we get better. I have a lot of confidence, and I have the optimism of a toddler, and I know that. But these are conversations we would have never had 5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Last month, the Post Board rolled out a way to search peace officer licenses online. It will show if the board has taken any disciplinary action against an officer. Right now, it can only take action after a conviction. The board wants to be able to act on a license if an officer violates the standard of conduct, whether there's been a conviction or not. We have a link to the public portal and proposed rule changes at WCCO.com. There, you'll also find a link to the first ever Post Board audit done in 2020. Still ahead, St. Paul has named its next police chief. What the commander selected to lead the department says about RRA training and if he'll continue what the previous administration started.